Well, hi there, my dear friends. This is Bob Hatton. This is the Encourager, and I'm so pleased to be with you again this morning. And we're going to have a look in the book of Deuteronomy and see what God says to us today. During the last few days, we've been talking about the five languages of God's love. And I've actually stolen this title from a book about married life. That it says that there are five different languages that we speak to our partner with, and you can get that book. It's very good. It's helpful. But I've just changed it a little bit and called it the five languages of the love of God. And of course, Moses is speaking to a new generation. Their parents were slaves in Egypt. And they've been delivered, they've been released, they've been brought out. But then they turned out that for 40 years they were nomads. And these young people, this new generation, they've also spent their lives as nomads. But they're coming into a new season. They're going to go over the Jordan. They're going to enter the promised land. And they will change from being nomads and will start to become settlers. They'll start to live in villages and they will build cities. And this is the advice what Moses is giving them. You know, we saw that they would have to have an attitude of trust in God, but also obedience would be part of this package. And then yesterday we had a look at the fact that a part of the language of the love of God is the family life, and how important it is that we invest in our families, that we invest in our children. So today we come to the next one, and it's actually generosity. And we can read Deuteronomy and we can just think, it's just a load of rules and regulations. There are some little bit of stories in there which are very interesting, but there's a lot of rules and regulations, and we can leave it at that and say, it's a very heavy book. It puts a load on us, and as I said, before, what the Lord teaches us is that we can't keep it. But it does teach us something else, and it shows us something about the attributes of God. It tells us how God is. And God is so generous. Now, we live in quite a rural area. We love living here. And when we leave our house, when we go in front of the house and walk for less than a minute, we're already into the fields. And we just love doing that. We love going through the fields and looking at the fields and seeing what is growing. Of course, in our vicinity, in our area, we've got winter at the moment. We're just coming to the end of winter, just maybe another month, and then the weather will change. It'll get a little bit warmer, and things will start to happen in the fields. They already put seed in the ground last year, and it started to grow, and we can see just a little bit, but everything is very slow. We can't see what's going to happen. But as I said, just in a couple of weeks, when the sun comes out, it gets a little warmer. Everything will start to explode and start to grow in the field, but on the trees, the buds are already there. They're getting a little bit fatter than what they were, but they're all closed. But in these next few weeks, they will just burst open, and maybe in 2 months, then we'll have blossom all over the trees. It's a very exciting time, but it's even more exciting when the harvest comes, when the stuff is ready in the fields and on the trees, when fruit is there. And one thing that we could summarize everything that we see with abundance. There is an abundance, and I know the farmers are always looking to try to get more out of a square meter, to get a bigger yield, and so on. But even if it's not very good, it still looks like there's an abundance for us. We have an abundance of fruit, of apples and cherries and plums on the trees when we come to that. And that just shows us the generosity of God. That's something about his character is generous. Now, I'd like to read you something from Deuteronomy today, and I've got Deuteronomy chapter 14. I'd like to read at the end of from verse 28 to the end of the chapter. And it says there, you shall bring all of the tithe of the produce in the same year and lay it up within your towns. And the Levi, because he has no portion or inheritance with you, and the sojourner, the fatherless, the widow, who are within your towns, will come and eat and be filled, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands that you do. Now, the rule, the law, says that you've got to take a tenth of the stuff that a tenth of your yield, what you get out of the land, and you've got to bring it somewhere in the city. And from this, the Levites are to be fed. They can live from that. The Levites were the people who didn't have any inheritance. They were there to serve God. The priests were Levites, and they worked in the temple, and that was to keep them. But also the sojourner, that is the refugee, the traveler, the stranger, we would say today, but also the orphans and the widows, the people who are socially very weak. They should be supported by this. And we can take that to be a law, or we can take it to be a principle. It shows us something of the heart of God. But then as we read through the Bible, we find out that there was another tithe. And when you went to the temple to worship God, you should also bring a tithe there. And then every 3 years you are expected to bring another tithe to support the poor in the community. Now, that could be a burden on you unless you've been set free and have a heart of generosity like God has. And this is something that really inspires me, that God is generous, and he expects his children to be generous. And when we are generous, we begin to experience miracles in the area of provision. And if I had more time, I could tell you many stories of how we have experienced that. But we look at Jesus and we see that he who was rich, he became poor for our sakes. He came and lived with us. He took on the form of a servant, and he lived a life that was exemplary. Although he was actually rich, he lived as a servant, and he was very generous with everything that he had. He is a great example for us. So when we enter the new season, when we come into this new land that God has given us, and I think as Christians in the New Testament, we're not moving into any new land probably, but we're always moving, we're always going forward, and there's always a new time, and everything around us is changing. And one of the things that we need to take with us, as well as being trusting God and being obedient, investing in our families and our children, but also having a spirit of generosity to other people. And this is so very, very good. Well, I'll leave you to have a think about that today. Maybe you find other Bible references. There's lots and lots of them in the New Testament as well. So have a look at that and just be blessed. Have a good day. You're Bob Hatton. You're Encourager.